Hello, everybody. I'm Lisa Burwell, your host of These Speaks Conversations with Heart and Soul. And we've got a great interview lined up right now with some pretty amazing influencers digitally worldwide, Krista Williams and Lindsey Simcik, who are the founders and hosts of Almost 30, a top 50 rated podcast. And I'm super excited for two reasons. One, we've been following them, and a lot of the youngsters in our office have been following you, and that's how I was introduced to you from them. And I like this, multi-generational exercise, because I think that the crossover is much more prevalent than people think, and that I don't think things are just completely relegated to like when you have a name like Almost 30 and whatnot. So I find your trajectory, your business acumen, and everything that you're doing just amazing. And you kind of just blew doors off the internet with what you were doing that started so organically. So I cannot wait. The second reason is because you're our cover girls, and I love my cover girls. And I will hold up your beautiful picture on this cover that is getting rave reviews, and it really pops. It pops, and the interview is fantastic too. So for the few people left on the planet who don't know of you already, let's tell them the story about how you met 7 years ago when, who was it that was interviewing to work at SoulCycle? Was that you?
Was me.
Okay. That was you. And then how did you meet? Were you in the class together?
So Lindsey's a instructor herself, or she was an instructor herself at that time. And I had found SoulCycle when I lived in New York City, and I just fell in love. I was in the corporate world for a long time, and I felt really unfulfilled in my jobs. I felt really lost. I wanted to make a difference, and I wanted to have purpose, and I wanted to feel like I could be myself. And that was probably the biggest thing. So when I found SoulCycle, I was like, okay, there's community, there's movement. They look like they're having a lot of fun. There's a lot of good music. This seems amazing. So I fell in love, as you do. And I tried to be an instructor. So I auditioned in New York City, and I didn't get my audition, but I wanted to try again because I was determined. I thought this was going to be my purpose, and it was going to be something that I was going to manifest. At my first audition, I was really uncomfortable on the microphone. So at the auditions for SoulCycle, you have to put on a microphone and then perform in front of a room of people that are also auditioning. And when I put on the microphone, I felt so uncomfortable. I could not even stand to hear myself over the loudspeaker. So I knew that if I wanted to audition again and hopefully become a SoulCycle instructor, I had to get vocal lessons to be better on a microphone. So for the next year in New York City, I got voice lessons. I'd leave my lunch on Wednesdays to go to the Upper East Side on the train, to scoot there, scoot back, taking a very extended lunch to get better on the microphone. And I also, through my process, wanted to find a connection, in the company that would support me in my next round of interviews. So I had a friend connect me to Lindsey Simcik. We did a FaceTime call. She walked me through the entire interview process at SoulCycle. She said, this should be your song. You should do this kind of movement. This is kind of what they're looking for. Good luck. So I did my second audition. I didn't get it again, but I was connected to Lindsey. And when I felt super lost because I thought SoulCycle was my way out of the corporate world, I felt like it was a dream of mine to be an instructor. I had this person that I newly met in Lindsey that I felt really connected to. And I felt really saw me, and I felt really understood where I was in life. And where I was in my Saturn return, and where Lindsey was in her Saturn return. And there is this period in our life when we go through a lot of change, a lot of, things are happening with our body, with our family, friends, relationships, jobs. And we both just connected in this feeling of feeling together in community, but also lost in the world. And one day I said to her, would you want to start a podcast? And she's always down for a creative pursuit. And she said, yes. And so 6 months of recording on our closet floors, we just kind of tried a bunch of different things. We had our friends call in and act like they were listeners. We tried different segments. We were just all over the place. But eventually we launched Almost 30 around 2016, September. And then from there, it's just grown.
Mm-hmm. So did you end up still taking the classes at Soul Cycle the second time after you were rejected to go?
Did I burn the place down? No, that's coming soon. But every time I tell this story, I'm just like, oh man, they're really like, at first I was so insecure, but now I'm like, man, they really missed out. But I don't take it anymore. It lost its luster. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. But the craziest part about that, one of the reasons you felt that you weren't hired is because of the way you were performing, and now you're a top 50 podcaster. I mean, do you find that that's quite ironic that you've gone
so
from 0 to 60 or 600? It's crazy.
Yeah. That's the thing about life, is that we have a plan, and oftentimes, we can't plan for what's more beautiful for us to happen.
Right. So, Lindsey, did you want to do a podcast, or did you have to get talked into it?
Like Krista said, I really genuinely have always been very down and open to do anything creative. I really love the process of creating something new, really tapping into what hasn't been done before or done in a different way. And while there were other podcasts out there, I knew that our budding relationship and experiences during that very transformational period was like really ripe for creating. Oftentimes, like, some of the most beautiful poetry, books, scripts come from a very difficult period in a person's life. And so I felt very safe to create with Krista. And while I had zero clue of how to create a podcast, zero, I did know a little something about like voice and sound production, like very basic, but I had this janky recorder in my drawer that was gathering dust. And I was like, I think we could just use this and just kind of like start there. Wow. And, with other things that I had created in the past, like I've created different web series and just many things that I did while I was living in New York. I just knew the consistency that it took, and I knew that I had to treat it like a job. And so that's why, like, Krista and I would meet a few times a week, same time, same place. We would have an agenda, we would have a to-do list, and we had no idea whether this was going to be a thing or not, whether it was going to make us money or not, but we treated it as if it did and was going to.
So at the very beginning, during that period of time that you're explaining to me, did you know that it was the ethos of it was going to be centric to wellness and health and consciousness, or did that evolve?
That certainly evolved. I mean, if you go back and listen to early episodes, it was a little bit more raw and raunchy, I would say. We were really speaking from a place where, I was single at the time. I was like serial dating. So we were sharing like dating stories and, other things that we cringe about now, to be perfectly honest. We learned a lot along the way, though. We learned, what felt really good and aligned to share in such a public way. We had to learn the hard way by oversharing in a way that maybe embarrassed us or embarrassed family or friends. And over time, we, followed our own innate interests. And we started to talk more and more about, definitely spirituality, which is where we kind of land today, but this connection between the mind and the body, and how it's all connected to health and wellness, and how we feed our spirit as well. And really, when I describe Almost 30 to people who are like, what is this? It's easy and it's hard to describe because everything's connected. And that's what we've learned, is that, everything from your relationships and your intimacy is connected to how you're nourishing your body, what type of, TV or things on the internet you're consuming. How does that affect your energetic body? So yeah, we span many a topic. But we really feel as though our own curiosities and our own growth has like certainly informed all of our content on the podcast.
I have a theory that people are so much more similar and alike and that like the everyman, like if I like something, I'm pretty sure like almost everybody else is going to, if I'm feeling down and dejected or hurt, like we're so absolutely connected. And, do you feel like as you get older in the 7 years since you started, so is the first time podcaster 7 years ago still following you, or are you like amassing a band of like other people now that 7 years later? So are your demographics changing?
Yeah, I would say to that question, and even to your point, I think that what makes Almost 30 so special is that although the topics change, the emotions and the authenticity has stayed the same. So, where people sometimes aren't interested in energy healing or aliens or understanding their biomarkers and their health, they're going to be interested in stories that are real and authentic and truthful, and people that are being really honest about where they are in life. So we've changed quite a bit. And I think we have, lost people, we've gained people. Some people really loved us when we were really raw and raunchy and we were super lost and, we had no idea what we were doing. And some people love us as like the polished brand that exists that shares about things that are more conscious. But if we get too caught up in sort of who's listening and why are they listening and do they like it, then we're not going to be leaders. And then we're not going to be people that are cutting edge in the space of like talking about what we talk about and making sure to be ourselves. So where we are mindful of trying to keep the audience of OG listeners that we have that have been with us from day one, we also can't, create for everyone else to like us, because then we wouldn't create something special.
Correct. Wow. So your recent launch, I don't know how recent it is, of your morning microdose. When did that start? Fairly recently?
Yeah, a few months back in the fall, we launched Morning Microdose, and this show came from a conversation Krista and I were having on one of our walks. And, we really wanted to be able to impact our listeners and new listeners in a way that was digestible and fit into their morning, ideally, but it can be any time of day schedule. Mm-hmm. And we know our mornings are so sacred and we're incredibly impressionable when we first wake up to the world. And so if instead of scrolling your phone and watching the news or whatever you do in the morning, you could put something in your ears that could really prime you for the day, really get you into your curious mind, into your heart, maybe even make you laugh. We're happy to do it. So we have episodes 5 days a week, Monday through Friday.
Mm-hmm. Well, I watched a couple of them in getting ready for this interview too. And I was wondering, in addition to everything that you just said, and of course, that's a great way to start the day, what I have found in the last year and a half, is that I'm busier and busier than I have ever been before. And even if I work 14 hours a day when I used to work 10, I still can't catch up. So, and in the world of where we're all fast paced, even, moms with 2 kids at home, that doesn't work. She's stressed, And I don't know what happened, because I was always a person who was very deadline oriented and I can achieve deadlines like nobody's business. But I'm like, well, I know I'm good at it. How is it so hard right now? So in the world and space that we're in, is it almost also that people only have 10 minutes because they don't even have 30 anymore? I mean, do you feel like that? The time is just crazy. Sped up to a place that you can't catch up.
Yeah, I feel like it's warp speed for so many people. And what I love is this book that I've talked about before on the podcast. It's called Moonwalking with Einstein. And it's about this guy that entered a memory competition and eventually won it. But in it, he had to study the brain a lot. And one of the quotes is, monotony collapses time, novelty unfolds it. And what I love about that so much is that so many of us are feeling like time is speeding up so much because we're doing a lot of the same things. We're in our work, we're at our computer, we're in our emails, we're on our phone, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram. We're sort of doing the same things, although it may feel a little different because the context is different. But the brain, into our experience as a human, it can feel very the same. So in life, I try as much to bring in novelty. You know, I travel quite a bit. I'll be working during, but I try and bring different experiences, driving a different way to work, eating a different thing for lunch to really expand my understanding of time. But it is something that I've felt as I've gotten older. And I think so many generations and people are also feeling like time is getting by so much faster. But how can we really expand time within our lives by adding in different practices, by saying, you know, different things to people that we love, or having different types of conversations, or trying new rituals and routines. And hopefully with Morning Microdose or Almost 30, you can find something that you can try to sort of expand time and bring more presence into your life.
Wow. That's awesome.
And I wonder too, you know, just on that, like how the novelty piece, and then how often are we finding like a flow state? Krista and I recently were working on our book proposal, and we really felt like we were able to only focus on this proposal. We were able to write for periods of time that allowed us to really drop into this flow state. And what I discovered was like, oh, wow, like there's a connection between the amount of time I have, or how fast time feels like it's going, and when I'm engaged in something that feels really purposeful and like stimulating on a deep level, not just stimulating up in the brain, but like really on a deep heart purpose level. And, you know, I don't know the science behind it. I don't know if there is any, but I just keep thinking about that connection, because at the end of a day like that, I feel so much better than when I'm checking emails every 5 minutes, when I'm responding fast to this, checking Slack, doing my 10 things on the to-do list. All those things must get done at some point. But I've just been thinking a lot about how can I make more space and time and really commit to dropping into that flow state more often.
It's a war with time to some degree too. I mean, I think you just have to fight it. You know, like you're both saying that you're just doing other things to like not follow the script of maybe just continuing like a drone to do everything that we're seemingly supposed to do every day. That was a great answer too. I have to read the book that you also mentioned too. That's pretty interesting. I took a trip to Ireland in October for 10 days. And I feel like that was the most life-changing thing I did in 2020, because I came back renewed, energetic, in a better mood. And sometimes you just really do have to check out and go somewhere else so that you can recalibrate for sure. One thing I also wanted to ask you, which I find like maybe even one of the biggest feats that you've accomplished in these 7 years, is being partners and still liking each other, loving each other, respecting each other. Because, you know, I've been in business, my own business, for 30 years. And, you know, the relationship of being in business with people is usually very difficult. And when I find friends, you know, girlfriends that have been friends for a really long time in business, I know a group with 2 girls down here. And I've always marveled at how brilliantly they have kept their business and their friendship going. And I think it's a rarity. Do you find it a rarity that what you've been able to accomplish together?
Yeah, I do. You know, whenever we coach people, so we coach people to start their own podcasts and businesses. And there are women that are like, you know, I met this woman, she's amazing, we're best friends, and we want to start a business together. And I'm oftentimes actually very hesitant, you know, to recommend that people go into business with people, because it can be so challenging. And it's funny that I say that, because I've had the most deep and transformational and beautiful and loving relationship with Lindsey that has absolutely transformed my life through creation of Almost 30 and running a business together. But it's not something that's easy. You know, Lindsey and I have to have hard conversations a lot. We call them clearing conversations, which is something that Lindsey is a master at, to really understand, you know, where we're at, to speak honestly, to tell each other what our dreams are, what our hopes are, what's bothering us, what's really working for us. And you have to continue to meet each other as well in your growth paths. So a lot of times relationships end because 2 people aren't aligned with the vision they have for life, the vision they have for the future, with their growth trajectory. And Lindsey and I have had to up level, at similar levels for the past 7 years. We've had to develop communication skills together to learn how to be, partners, be in business, and be best friends through this entire process. When you are connected in business and finances, in your public figureness, in SEO searches, and in friendship, and in almost a family, it's a lot of levels. And so I think the number one way that we've been able to make this successful is to prioritize our own inner work. Lindsey and I both go to therapy. Lindsey's gone to therapy longer than me. She was the one that started. So we see therapists regularly where we can process with them whatever's coming up. We can be, super honest. We can be where we're at. And then we bring it together if we have something to talk about, either with each other on a walk, in a peaceful space, in a regulated nervous system state, when we know what we're going to say and how we're going to say it. And then we also work with a coach. So having a coach is a beautiful opportunity to provide us with another perspective on whatever the problem is, whatever we're stressed about, whatever we're feeling, so that we can really have someone else that's going to play referee of whatever's happening. But a last thing I'll say about our partnership is we've never approached each other with anything less than respect. We've never called each other names. We've never raised our voices. We've never been cruel. We've never been disrespectful, and we've never done anything to break the trust of what we have within our relationship, of the foundation of love. So it's as beautiful and fulfilling as it is really, really hard work.
Mm-hmm. But it is beautiful. It really is.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And I think, for anyone out there, whether it's coming together as business partners or even in friendship, or even like members of your family that you have a close relationship with, it's those relationships that I find bring up the most in hard ways and like really beautiful transformational ways. So if you feel kind of that, that pressure inside where you're like, oh, I kind of want to run. This is hard. Like we've had moments like that. We've never actually ran and we've never actually considered running, but it's that feeling of oh my gosh, it gets hard. And the reason why it gets hard is because these types of relationships are soul relationships. These are literal soul contracts that you have with other people. And you are meant to grow with them, grow through your relationship. You are meant to meet parts of you through your relationship. And, once I was able to understand that higher perspective, and we talk about it on the show often, it became a lot more fun. I was like, wow, like there's a greater purpose to this. Like even in those hard moments, I can pull up and say like, I know we're growing, like all is well,
Right.
So, it's been the best. It's been the best, but you have to stay and you have to breathe and you have to be committed.
Right. I mean, I know it seems crazy what I'm about to say, but I really you can tell how people feel about each other, interact with each other in photos, even when you're doing podcasts together. And I thought about it, like women sometimes, sometimes women like get catty or there's an ego that's going on. And one of the first things that I've noticed, which is probably not what anybody else has noticed, because they're going for something else, I think, when they're maybe wanting to listen to a podcast, maybe get help or even kill time if they're at their computer or whatever. I am a student of just like studying people. And my takeaway from my first impression with you is like, they really like each other. They really respect each other. They give each other space. And that was the first thing I noticed. And I thought it was abnormally beautiful. So this is your year of intention that you were talking about too. And when you say that, how is this year, when you say that, different than past years? Because it sounds to me like you were always intentional. What's different about it? Or is there a new trick that you might want to share with us that I can take home?
Well, thank you for that reflection. It means a lot. That's one thing I'll say is that people are smarter than you think. And as much as you think you can hide, if we weren't actually friends, people would know and people would feel it. So I really appreciate that reflection. So yeah, the year of attention, what I know is that in the past, I might not have felt like I had an intention or I was on the right path, but my soul always knew and my soul always was. And there was a bigger purpose for all the failures and all the rejections and all of the, not getting auditions. It was very, very on purpose and on time. So this year, bringing the intention of really trying to be as much living my life as much as I am being in business. So building your own business as an entrepreneur, I was in the corporate world for 8 years. So the way that I understood business and work life was that you work all day, all night, and you just try and climb to the top. And when I started almost 30 with Lindsey, I was working a full-time job in the corporate world. So we were building the business on the side. When she was auditioning, she was at SoulCycle all the time. And so we were just in this hyper aroused nervous system state of doing, and did not make much time for our life, didn't make much time for our relationships, for the people that we love, for our bodies, for self-care. And so as we're in a place where the business is really healthy and really just in a perfectly beautiful, sustainable place, it's like, how can we actually bear the fruits of our labor when we're young enough to enjoy it? Why would we continue to be on the same path that I was on in the corporate world of working until I die when I created this business out of a desire to get out of that environment? So my intention really is to find ways to live my life more than to just work it. And the way that I do that is by trying as much as I can to catch myself when I'm in the loops of not enoughness. So that happens with meditation and mindfulness, to observe our thoughts, to see when I'm like, I should be doing this. I should be doing this. Really understanding when I'm saying the shoulds, because a lot of times the shoulds can be a really beautiful guide for us, that it's not actually the truth of what we want from a soul level or a personal level, but it's like something we feel like from a societal level we have to do. So I really am mindful of my should so that I can really stay in the present moment of my life and try and just live it more than I am just working.
I think intention is such a simple, free practice that changes everything. And I didn't believe it until I started to put it into practice. I definitely read Wayne Dyer's book, but then also in my work with my therapist, years ago, we were talking about the power of intention, and I did a 2-week exercise where everything I did, every hard conversation I had, every meeting I went into, every decision I would make, I infused with intention. And I swear to you, the mind will tell you that it's going to end up and go a different way. And the mind really, when we employ intention, needs to just take a back seat, take a rest, and let intention lead. But I would have a completely different experience than what my anxiety was telling me I was going to experience. And it became miraculous after a while. I was like, wait, what? This person just showed up in a completely different way than I anticipated. I didn't even tell them that I set an intention, but the energetics of intention are just far reaching. And I just imagine a world in which we all just put a little bit more intention into our decisions, into our words, into what we do, how we act, how we work, how we serve. And I think it would be really, really powerful.
Wow. Well, you're both very accomplished at this. Very, very good. Who was your most interesting or favorite guest that you've had over the last 7 years that you just went, oh my gosh, wasn't that amazing? And I can't believe it.
Like picking your favorite child, when you do so many interviews, you're like, what's your favorite child ever?
Or maybe a turning point where you went, wow, this is getting somewhere to a different level or whatever that means,
Yeah, I feel, what comes to my mind is Jay Shetty, who's a friend of the pod and has been on the podcast a few times. I'll never forget, first just feeling so honored and grateful that we got to spend time with him, that he came into studio, that he sat down with Lindsey and I for a conversation. But him after, and even in the interview, you could hear it in the first interview we've ever done, was just so complimentary and reflective of the heart that we have and the way that we interview and the way that we are with people. You know, he said it's one of his favorite interviews to date and was such a special conversation to him. And so that was a moment where, you know, sometimes in life we can want everyone to see us. We can say,
Right.
you know, I'd love for everybody in the world to see my potential and see how powerful I am and see how kind I am and see all these things. And it doesn't always feel like people see you. You know, it doesn't always feel like you're received in the way you want to be received. It doesn't always feel like everything works or you're always getting everything that you want. But to have a moment where someone you respect and someone you really honor just really reflects something really meaningful back to you when you're doing something that you love is just such a beautiful and memorable experience. So I think that was one of the most powerful ones for me, was that moment that really, really stood out. That was a reminder of our path and a reminder how far we've come from the beginning.
Wow. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, Jay's such a good one. We've had so many other ones that stand out to me are Danielle Laporte and Rich Roll, two people that, you know, we have learned from for many, many years, whether through their books or podcasts, and to sit down with them and to feel like with Danielle, it feels like we've known each other forever and we just kind of get on and we just rip, roar, and laugh. And it's so nice to be able to go deep and also like really laugh and have that lightness with guests and for them to feel comfortable enough to really go there and share vulnerably and to trust us. And, you know, those two in particular, you know, made me nervous to do. I'm sure Krista too, like they were people in our hearts that we were like, oh, wow, I hope we can get them on the podcast eventually. And they said yes. And I was like, okay, now we have to do this.
Right.
And it was just so comfortable and natural. And that's what we find with these, you know, bigger, more prominent, well-known guests is that they're never doing the same interview twice. They're always so present, kind, and yeah, really, really engaged and in their heart. And I really learn a lot from that, you know, as someone who sometimes gets interviewed. I'm like, oh, I want to be like that. I want to be in my heart and I want to be present enough to give answers that are true right now.
Awesome. What I would like to say is thank you that you, part of your business plan or your heart, probably your heart first, and then aligned with your business plan, was offering a platform where you would mentor people to get into podcasts like, you know, you did with us too. And that's so telling about like how big your heart is, and that, you know, business by the normal traditional terms of business is all about, you know, let's fortify the wall. Let's not let anyone in. Let's not give our trade secrets away. Let's not help anybody, which is the craziest, you know, the craziest thinking process that you could have, right? But it is what it is. And it's very, you know, it's been around for a long time. And I just think that it shows like an incredible amount of confidence that you have in yourselves and justly so, and in your podcast and everything that you've done in this short time. 7 years is not a long time to, I don't think, to reach like the level that you've reached. And then, yes, it's a tier of your business model, but I can tell just from, you know, our conversations that we've had too, that it is so intentional, and you know, you were so present, and I thank you for that. And it's been an interesting, fun little journey so far for us. And I thank you for everything that you're doing and for your time, because I know it's very valuable, and you probably want to get on the beach and go enjoy yourself in Hawaii.
Oh, Lisa, it's so nice to, and I just want to say, like, you know, what you are doing, not only with the podcast, the magazine, and I know you have many other arms of your business, and empowering women in the way that you do, the way you lead your team. Because I was able to sit in on, and just kind of, you know, support in a meeting around the podcast, and it's really inspiring because same with you, you know, you don't have to take time to mentor people and to really cultivate a culture where you do your business to support women and empower them. It's easier just to like task them out and run things like that, but you take the time to do that. So I really respect that.
Thank you. Yeah. I couldn't do it any other way because I would be so bored, so truly bored. And, you know, because it would be so empty, you know, if it wasn't authentic and if it wasn't true, and I just wouldn't enjoy it. You know, I don't enjoy the business that much that I wouldn't want like everybody to be doing well at the same time too. And I just love that you're cover girls. You're part of an elite team of elite crew. I'll tell you that. We're going to get a framed, but for both of you, and we'll send it to you too, that we get for,
you're sweet.
Thank
people.
you. I was going to do that anyway. So I appreciate
let us
that.
do it. Because we usually do it better than when people try to do it themselves because they cut up the magazine. And I'm like, no, that's not how it should be done. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day. I know people are going to love hearing what you have to say. You're both so ridiculously well-spoken and well-informed, and I'm very impressed. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you, team.
Thank you. Thank you for listening, everyone. I know you're going to enjoy this one. Thank you for watching and listening to V Speaks Conversations with Heart and Soul.